Welcome, Greg. Welcome back to Travel Connections. This is our third time together.
And you are.
I am your wife and partner in crime and tour mate, as it seems, on this trip to Patagonia. And who better to talk to than you, because you will give us a colorful commentary about our tour with Collette to Patagonia. And the name of the tour, for everyone, for your edification, is Patagonia Edge of the World. Welcome,
Perfect.
Craig. Really,
Thank you.
sincerely,
You
thank
say I'm
you.
never short on opinions, so I'm glad
Yeah,
to be here.
I know. But you were there with me enjoying this incredible time together. And I just thought, who better? I had Sol, our wonderful tour guide from Collette, Sol Maranon. She was in the first episode. So there
Right.
are two episodes devoted to Patagonia because, not to be cliche, but it is so enormous. The land is enormous. The tour was enormous, enormously wonderful, that I just felt we had to have two.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Saul was unbelievable, but let's
Yeah.
back up before we talk about her
Okay.
contribution and look at the fact that we scheduled this trip at least 3 times
To go to
over the
Patagonia,
last
not with
five,
Collette. Yeah.
6 years
Yeah.
and canceled every time, right?
Yeah.
Due to other things coming up or whatever. So I
Right.
feel like the whole idea of going there has been on our radar for a long time, right? So to finally do it, and I know we talked about this the last time, but it exceeded all expectations. It was an amazing trip for
It
sure.
was.
So
It,
then going back to Saul,
yeah.
I've been on 3 Collette tours. You
Hmm.
clearly more. And I feel like the tour guide can make the trip. But what you find is you become really endeared to that person because
Hmm.
of how amazing they are.
Hmm.
And I just think at the way Saul handled this group, the way that she handled the diversity of environments, from hot days in Buenos Aires to freezing cold windsuits in down deep Patagonia. And I think too, when you look at all the diverse personalities that, and how difficult it is at first for people to warm up to each other, she did a great job of bringing us together.
She did. But I will say with this group, it didn't take long. We were
No,
thick of thieves pretty quick.
right. And yeah, it's funny. You and I have kidded that you kind of form your tribe on these. Where like, here's the
Yeah.
4 or 6 that you kind of hang
Yeah.
out with
Yeah.
a lot. And as much as I'm familiar with you, because I live with you, I
Hmm.
think of the fact that there's one personality in this trip, Don. I hope he hears this. Without him and what he interjected into the trip, it wouldn't have gotten off so quickly. So just great guy, very funny man, and great to have him on the trip.
It was certainly lovely. So, wow. So we go to my sixth continent, your fifth continent. That's pretty exciting. South America for the first time. And we landed in Buenos Aires, which is the correct way to say it. I always said it the other way. And so we learned from Saul exactly how to say it properly. So we land in Buenos Aires. I knew that I would like it. I knew it would feel like Europe. I knew a little bit from what other friends had been there and what they thought. What was your first impression? Were you as impressed as I was?
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful city.
Hmm.
I think we always recommend whenever you go to a big city that you've never been to, get on the hop on, hop off bus, hire a tour guide. And in this case, we hired a tour guide, a wonderful 2 women who drove us around and just gave you a lot of the history. I think that when you realize so much of their development was a result of people migrating from Europe after World War I and World War II, you
Hmm.
really see that influence architecturally. And so, yeah, I was amazed at the enormity of the city. I was impressed by the architecture. I thought the people were phenomenal. And I think the food was excellent. So yeah, it exceeded expectations as we said, but it definitely impressed me, no doubt.
So to be clear, you and I arrived a few days early because we wanted to kind of get settled, and there really wasn't much jet lag though, because I think there was only for Pacific time, it was only 3 or 4 hours. It really wasn't a big deal. But you and I did decided to go a few days early, kind of get settled, and then we met up with our Collette group.
Correct.
So we had the opportunity of really seeing Buenos Aires a lot because we were there on the front end, and then on the back end we had a couple of days. So it was amazing. I've told other people that when you talk about the architecture, I always say, "Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing." Well, that's not really a good descriptive, I don't think. It kind of felt like Barcelona at times. It felt like Paris at times. It just had this European feel to it,
Right.
and I felt it was very impressive. I felt safe. It was clean. There was a lot of history there. There was a lot of color. There were neighborhoods, Recoleta, which is where the famous cemetery is. What were your impressions of the cemetery? I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's you don't want to make a cemetery the highlight of a trip. Just saying, but I,
I
I
don't
think
mean
when
that.
I
I just
yeah,
thank you,
I
dear.
think when I look at the neighborhoods, I think that each was so distinctly different from the other,
Hmm. Hmm.
in terms of what the people were like, what the environment was like. I think for me, yeah, the Recoleta area was amazing. I
Yeah.
think going to see where the town really began and where a lot of the people who worked in the shipyards had lived, that was interesting to me.
La Boca and
Yeah.
Caminata,
I
Caminito,
I,
Caminito.
I think their affinity for football, soccer, and
Hmm.
seeing that stadium and the influence it had with the colors on the whole neighborhood,
Yeah.
just impressive like that. I think I too saw traces of even London with Paris
Interesting.
and Barcelona. I see all that, but yeah, I think what hit me too was the history, because we don't study, certainly don't study South American history in our schools here. And we
No.
all are aware of Eva Peron and the
Hmm.
influence she had on that country. But to go there and have the perspective of where their palace is and how she was viewed and the controversies around her, that was interesting to learn about, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just you could spend a month there and
Yeah.
just scratch the surface as we
Yeah.
did in 5 days.
I loved it. So a couple of highlights for me was the bookstore. Alateneo, I think it was if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And it was in an old opera house. It was spectacular. I had seen it on Instagram actually, and I had learned from other sources, but it was supposed to be, quote, the most beautiful bookstore in the world. I can see where it would hold up there as one of the top that I've ever seen. I really enjoyed seeing that.
Well, what makes it more impressive is that every title was in Spanish. So for you to be impressed means we probably want to dive deeper into that. But
Well, you know I'm multilingual.
yeah, I know you're not. Here's
Yes.
here's what I do think that was really cool there.
What?
There's one of the clerks who worked there.
Mhm.
You have an affinity for an author out of Nashville,
And
and
Patchett. Hmm.
yep, and you had just said, just for a point of reference, do you have any of her work?
Hmm.
And this man took the time after telling us where to go to come find us
Hmm.
and find the book and then take 10, 15 minutes to explain to us the history of the building when we were clearly American and clearly not buying books because they weren't something we could read. But it was a testament to
Yeah.
the kind of people that they have that are managing and working in that bookstore. So that I thought that stood out to me.
Mhm.
But when you look at other places, like and you're better at the names than I am, there was a market we went to for lunch,
San
like
Telmo. It was called San Telmo.
Santelmo, thank you.
Yes.
Very reminiscent of the Central Market in Los Angeles,
Hmm.
and just incredible small food kiosks, barbecue right in front of you. And when you think Buenos Aires, you think about red meat, you think
Right.
about beef. And to go into that environment and to have fresh empanadas that were incredible, I just thought That stood out to me.
I loved that. I thought that was super cool. We went a couple times. We just couldn't get enough. So it was, I highly recommend that. The other experience I wanted to share real quick that we went with our, I think it was the first night with our new tour mates. We went with a handful of new friends. We went to the pizza place, and I might be butchering this name, but Quarito, starts with a C, and it had been around, you guys, for 40 years, 50 years, kind of old school, very casual. But what was all over the walls? How do you say his name? Maradano?
Maradona. Yeah.
Maradona.
So
There
you
were
got,
flags. There were photos.
yeah,
There, I mean, it was like an altar to him. It was amazing.
yeah. I think, and if you think of back to Napoli when we were there, there was a shrine to him there
Yeah,
as
there
well.
was.
But you look at,
He
sorry,
played for Napoli, though. He was from
he
Argentina,
did,
but played for
played or
Napoli. Is that
coached. But
right?
and again, if it was a Dodger question, I could give you the
I
answer.
know. I know.
Get,
I know.
getting better. But
Great.
yeah, I think that just the deference to all the soccer players, but Maradona was all over that building
Yeah, it was fun.
inside. And
It was
it
super
was
fun.
fun walking there because I was probably 10 blocks from the hotel and you have no idea where you're going. And you step into this place and you just think, this looks a little dicey. And it turned out to be like some of the best pizza you'll ever have in your life.
Right.
Really. Yeah.
It was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was Saul had recommended it, and I have since seen it other places, but
Right.
that was great. Okay.
Now,
So,
keep in mind, we had just
okay.
met Saul for the first time that afternoon.
Yeah,
So
like
who
15
knows?
minutes before.
Right. Who knows if it's going to be a good recommendation, but that set the tone. And
It
as I
did.
recall, we brought her back pizza
We
as a,
did. We
yeah,
did. She was
yeah,
busy working.
yeah,
Good memory. Okay, so we did spend a lovely amount of time. We did go on tours with Collette, which was awesome, and it gave us a whole, view of the city.
yeah,
I feel like we really did get a chance to kind of get to know Buenos Aires. So then we hop on a plane and we go down to El Calafate, and I
yeah.
love to say Calafate. It was our gateway to Patagonia. And Patagonia is an enormous place, like 403,000 acres. Are you impressed with that? I know
Yeah,
little bit, that little
yeah,
tidbit. Anyway,
yeah.
so we start in Patagonia and we're kind of just getting kind of the feel of everything. And then we are off and we go to I think the first day was the glacier,
Mhm.
Perito Moreno Glacier, which was spectacular. What was your impression of that? Because you had never seen anything like that.
I think if I say Calafate to you later tonight, is that, yeah, that'll help me.
I
Um,
don't know. Maybe I like that little accent.
yeah,
It works.
I can do it.
Yes.
This, I think, if you look at Calafate and you look at the town,
Mhm.
first of all, I was struck by the dogs, the wild dogs everywhere,
Yeah.
biting at the cars, right?
Yeah.
And you
They
just,
would
your
chase
heart goes,
after the cars. Yeah.
right. And you're just hoping, oh no. And then you realize
Nope.
they've been doing this forever
Nope.
and they've got it wired.
Right.
I think we also stumbled into the hotel had offered this, I don't want to call it a happy hour. It was their local tea with, it just, what do they call that?
It's called yerba mate. They call it mate. It's a
Yeah.
very popular tea, and
Yeah.
they pile a bunch of herbs into an urn and sometimes a cup. And in their case, they brewed it for us and poured us tea. But most people walk around with a cup and they sip it all day long, and it's
Right.
quite delicious. And then they
Right.
fried up these little tortilla things and put sugar on them. Oh man, that was such a great introduction.
It was great. And we walked to a great dinner and it was just a great time. But the next day, I think when you go to your first glacier, it
Mhm.
really sets the tone for, well, this is going to be amazing, right? And that was spectacular to be in a boat up close to it.
Mhm.
But I mean, then you start to look at the enormity of the rest of the glaciers you see later, and it's just like
Right.
that was the appetizer.
Well, and it's just so funny. You're there and you're thinking, oh, I can go home now. I have just
Yeah,
seen the most spectacular, the most Game of Thrones-ish size glacier, aqua. We saw it calving. We saw all of it. It was sunshine. There
Yeah,
was like 20 of us on a boat. I mean, it was, I'm talking too loud. It was amazing.
it was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that was our first exposure. I'm like, oh my God, if the itinerary keeps going, I don't know how I'm going to keep up. There are truly so many things on this itinerary that we don't have time in 30 minutes to touch on it. And we're already halfway through, and I've got a lot more to cover. May have to go a little bit longer. So we go to the glacier, we go to Torre del Paine, and that I was butchering too. I didn't say that properly. I was calling it Torres del Paine, and it's Torre del Paine. So I'm hoping future travelers will be able to say that properly. But we also got to go there on a day where there were no clouds. They have these three mountains, these granite peaks that everyone wants to see, this trio. And most, not often, but a lot of times the clouds are covering them, and we saw all the way to the tip.
Yeah.
And I felt very fortunate to see that.
No, it's just breathtaking, and it's such a
Mhm.
different landscape than you're used to. And
Mhm.
it's funny that you never have had too much of it. You never take it
No,
for granted because it's so
no.
beautiful.
Well, and I think that is what I expected of Patagonia. I expected kind of vast spaces, tall mountains, craggy mountains, beauty. When I was talking with Sol, she was bringing up words like purity, pure air and pure water and untouched. And that is exactly what we found. There's not too many places you can go where there's no one been there, not too many people have been there before you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think so. I think just incredible. I had this vision. I think it was a Bourdain show years ago where they went back in the hills of Patagonia with a chef who cooked on an open spit. And I had this image of meadows and valleys and mountains. And I think a lot of that was captured in the sheep farm, right? Which was just really, to me, very indicative of what that area was like. The wind was so strong, and to
God.
watch the man who was like a third generation sheep herder
Mhm.
to have his dog herd the sheep for us, to take us in and actually shear the sheep and show us what's involved. The whole thing was, you just realize what a different world it is from what we live in, but a fascinating one.
Well, it is. And I loved that opportunity. And I think Collette did an amazing job with that because they're providing me with something I never could do on my own. What am I going to call up Gonzalo and say, hey, I'm this woman that's in Patagonia. Can I come hang out at your farm? No. And I loved the fact that we were able to take a tour, and then he did a demonstration with Fio, is the name of the sheep herding dog. And oh, and by the way, his the man who owns the ranch, he's like third or fourth generation Scottish. So
Yeah,
his ancestors came over from Scotland, and so
right.
they started it, and he's very proud of the land and proud of what they're accomplishing. But they have like 2,000 acres now, I think. And we watched this dog race around and move the sheep. And then instead of like riding a horse to get to the next, pasture where the sheep were, they get on this dirt bike, and he does a little whistle thing, and the dog just and hops right up, and he sits up on the gas tank. I mean, it looked almost like one of those like America's Funniest Home Video. I mean, it didn't look real, but this
There's
was their
probably a
life.
technical term for the little whistle thing, but here's what I took out of it though too. You
Thank you.
just touched on this.
Hmm.
it, Had we followed through the other three times on whatever
Hmm.
trip we set up, the nuances of meeting the sheep herder and having lunch in his house with his wife,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think the experience in Africa, going to a home meal, if
Right.
you're the beauty of going on a tour like this is they have the expertise, they've done the pre-work to
Mhm.
set you up with a view of where you're going that you would never find on your own, ever. And
Yeah.
then to have a tour guide who knows it intimately on top of it, who can answer questions and explain, it just it just makes the whole thing so different. Yeah, I think you look at it and you think, oh, I could have maybe found the hotel with the web search, but you could never do all the things that
Mm-mm.
they incorporate into this.
No.
Or to have someone like Saul point out to you, at this point, you probably want to like pay attention because on the right, you're going to see this, right?
Right.
And it was just, it's incredible what we wouldn't see had we not worked with someone like Collette.
You know, and that's how I feel too. Just to add on to our lunch there, so we took a tour of the ranch. The winds were so strong, they nearly knocked me over. I've never experienced winds like that before. So we had the winds, they sheared the sheep, and then I want to tell the story real quick about the yarn. Well, you and I didn't even talk about it, I don't think. So Craig and I were celebrating our, literally while we were in Patagonia, our 40th wedding anniversary. And so we're all kind of in a group, and Gonzalo is taking the yarn and he's kind of rubbing it between his hands. It's like freshly shorn from the sheep, and he's like pulling it and pulling it, and all of a sudden he's got this piece of yarn, and he starts into this story that he talks about love and how people should be together, and
But
there's a tradition where you tie their wrists together, and we have someone here, and we didn't know he was talking about us, so we go walking up and he ties this sheep yarn around our wrists, and it was just such a lovely addition, so unexpected.
yeah,
I had to interject that little story because I love that, because it just, I don't know, it elevated it for me. It was
it's awesome. No,
very
it was
fun.
cool. Definitely.
Yeah. So, okay, so picture this. We start in Buenos Aires, we go down to El Calafate. Now we're all the way down to the Strait of Magellan. We've kind of, there's some other places in there, but we don't have time, unfortunately, to talk about them. So we're at the Strait of Magellan. Okay, I felt like a true explorer. I'm standing there where Magellan was. They named this canal or strait for this explorer. How cool was that museum? I talked a little bit about this with Saul in the first episode, but let's talk about that. We were walking on replicas of what Magellan sailed from Europe.
Yeah. So, I mean, truly a passion play for the
Mhm.
man who invested and has built this, right? You don't know how he monetizes, but and how he sustains this, but
Yeah.
incredible to walk in these replicas and to look at the size of the vessels that these people were in. It's stunning. It's frightening, right?
So small,
Yeah,
so much smaller than I mean, I don't know what the dimensions were. You can look it up on the website, but it was not big. I mean, there's no toilets, there's no kitchen, there's no anything.
right.
These people are stuck there.
They're stuck, but what makes it more impressive is when you actually go out on the ocean. I know you're going to get to that,
Yeah.
but you see the roughness of the seas. It's
Mhm.
treacherous. So, I mean, who knows what the odds are of making it around,
I
and
know.
with the weather and to worry about everything. So, yeah, just incredible to go there and see that for sure.
And so we're slowly making our way down to the tip of South America, and that concept to me was super cool. I
Yeah,
loved that. I think that was fun. So let's spend the last few minutes. Well, we'll talk about this and then we'll do one or two other things. Let's talk about the cruise. So the cruise is a 4-night cruise
yeah,
that, sorry,
I
yes,
agreed with you. That
you
might
agree.
stun you, but I
Thank
agreed with
you.
you.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much for agreeing
yeah,
with me. And we didn't know really what to expect. Oh, I got you to smile. That's funny. Um, we didn't really know what to expect. I was kind of afraid of rough seas. That is not what I experienced. I didn't have any issue with that. But it was a Chilean ship, and the importance of the Chilean ship is that because it's from Chile, you can actually take a boat, a Zodiac boat, because we're going to talk about those next, right onto the land. No other ships can do that.
right,
I thought the
right.
whole experience, it was so impressive. What did you
Yeah.
think?
So you've been on more cruises than I have.
But not
But
like this one.
No, but
An
this to
average.
me, so not a crazy large ship like
No.
you see on
200
commercials,
people. 200
right?
people.
I think the effort the crew went to
Mhm.
make it worthwhile, to make it enjoyable. Don't forget that 2 of the 4 nights we woke up at 2 in the morning being thrown around the room because
Yeah,
you're
that
on
was
rough,
crazy town.
right?
Safe, but oh my gosh.
That we had 1 or 2 excursions aborted because of the harsh
Yeah,
weather outside. I
yeah.
mean, you're
Because of
heading down to that part of the world. It's
the
rough,
wind.
right?
The wind was
But I
crazy.
think, yeah, amazing. But you touched on too, calling it Chilean. And I think we go through years of going to restaurants, you order the Chilean sea
Chilean,
bass,
Chilean
Chilean
sea
sea
bass. Yeah.
bass. And then you realize, no, that's an American term. And
Uh-huh.
it's Chilean to say it correctly, right?
Yes.
And I mean, that's interesting to see. I just, the cultural difference, we'll say, between Chile and Argentina
Mhm.
is stunning.
It was fun.
Go Google that on yourself. We'll leave that out of this.
Yeah.
But it's
One is
amazing.
superior than the other,
Right. And I don't
depending
want
on
to
who
pick
you talk
sides,
to.
but I'm partial towards the seaside. Um,
Yes.
and I just think though that now you get down into the waters and you're going to these uninhabited islands. And I think I had this image of seeing like an abundance of penguins. And what you really see are incredible land. You
Mhm.
see the hardships that people would have gone through to settle there.
Yeah.
You see the importance of the water passage to get people to be able to complete trade from a different continent.
Yeah.
Just amazing, really incredible.
Well, the Zodiacs were really very cool. I
Yeah.
felt really adventurous in the Zodiacs. So you're trying to guess just how cold it's going to be
Hmm.
because on some days it was sunny and we really didn't have to worry about it. And then on other days it was cold and we were bouncing and we were getting wet. But oh my gosh, I felt like an adventurer out on a Zodiac boat. Did you like it as much as me, or am I just a geek? You're supposed to answer.
Um, I think I thought I loved being on the boats. You can that the
Yeah,
you personality figure that out yourself. I
yeah.
think I
Well,
loved being on the boats.
hmm
I thought that just it was exciting. Every way they
yes.
handled it was great. But yeah,
Well, I'm sorry, did I
but you know
interrupt?
what I like better about, because I've been on enough zodiacs. It's okay. It's cool
Yeah,
getting to the island and taking hikes
yeah.
and just seeing the difference. That to me, that was really cool.
Hiking around there where virtually not too many people have ever been before was
No.
quite exciting. Also on the ship, the food is amazing, the service is amazing. The people that work on the ship are so accommodating. There were lectures we could go to and learn about the history of the area, the history of the explorers that had been there, or the Antarctic explorers. We were only at our furthest point south. We were only about 500 miles away from Antarctica, which I think is super cool. Everything about the ship I thought was remarkable. There was one experience that I was so unexpected, and that was we went to an area and it's called, let me think, Glacier Alley.
Hmm.
And on Glacier Alley, you're kind of sailing along this channel, and then there's this one, and it's named after Holland, and then you come to the next one, and it's named after Italy. And so what the ship did is it served us food and appetizers and drinks that went along with each country. It was so unexpected. I took some great shots of you, by the way, during this international interlude. I don't know if you remember this, but they're going up soon. So,
You know what's interesting? I'd forgotten about that. But
yeah.
you're right. I think there are 7 or 8 courses of
Mhm.
here's pizza for Italy, here's
Yeah.
empanadas for whatever for
Right.
South America. I just thought it was really cool. But I laugh too because when we're on these things, wherever we are, you always say to me, "You're off talking to everybody. You're not giving me any attention," right? And I think that whole multi countries, multi course plays right into my sweet spot. I was talking to everybody. I loved it. It's great.
Well, the ship kind of enables you to do that.
Yeah,
And the fun part, well, I think this was kind of fun. You actually met, so there were 200 people that could be on the ship, but we only had about 100. And there ended up being somebody from your company on that ship. I thought that was a
yeah,
pretty small world. So it was
yeah.
fun
I mean,
because you're able to talk to, we only had, I think, 14 in our group, but you have the opportunity to talk to other travelers, and that was really fun.
I think, yeah, so I like how they gave you options. So they would say there's three levels of difficulty for today's excursion.
Mhm.
And so we often took the higher level and we would leave earlier to do that. And you're right, that one morning it's like 6 a.m. You're getting your coffee so that you can brace yourself for what you're about to go out into. I talked to a guy next to me who was in tech. I'm in tech. What do you do? And then within a minute, we realize Oracle,
Yeah,
crazy, right?
that was
So
crazy.
yeah, maybe they should be sponsoring. If I say their name again, they'll have to pay for
I
this.
know. I think they need to sponsor
But
the
yeah, it's a
podcast.
small world, and that's the point of travel, though.
Mm,
I remember going back 10 years ago. You and I were on the footsteps of the Opera House in Sydney, and running into a woman who we'd known very closely, who dated my best friend. Right,
in
the world is
California
so
years
much
ago. Yeah,
smaller than
yeah.
people understand.
Oh,
But when
for
you go and
sure.
you talk to people, what you uncover is really kind of cool.
It is amazing. And I think that leads me to my final point. I can't believe there's so much to talk about on this tour. About small group tours. You've had the experience now of three different times with Iceland and Africa and this one. And prior to our doing this, we never were tour people. We didn't go on tours with people. But I highly recommend it. I think it is so fabulous to have someone else do all the work, all the research, and I just
Yes.
show up. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, 100%. To me, so if I look at these last few, you're roughly 20 people, right? Roughly. And I think it's easier to get to know people.
Hmm.
I think comfort's established very quickly. But I think you're going to find people from different parts of the country, from different parts of the world. In this case, we had Puerto Rico and the US and Canada on this trip.
Yeah, we did.
I just feel like it's a great environment, but for me, it's connecting those dots so that I don't have to spend months researching
Mhm.
and then missing,
Mhm.
right? And I think, yeah, it's an amazing way to go. I think there's no age difference required for these. You could be college graduate to retired. I think the key is you want to be able to walk and
Yeah,
to have access.
yeah,
Now, you and I have been in France and we've seen people that struggled walking up the hills. That's not a way that you want to roll.
yeah.
But I think that if you look at the vast age group that this should appeal to, and if you realize that it's saving you a ton of time, and it's funny too, you're allowed to go at your pace.
Mhm.
So you come back pretty tired every night, but you still are allowed. You're not being worked to death, run to death. You have options, but you don't want to miss anything they're setting up because there's no filler. It's all like really good content.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And they do a good job balancing relaxation with activities. But at the same time, you have traveled to Patagonia. Do you really want to sit in your room?
No,
I certainly don't.
no, no.
So I love that. And so would you recommend going to Patagonia to everyone, or would you say it takes an adventurer's kind of mindset?
I was going to say I already have recommended it.
Yeah.
Look, 20% of the world should never leave their house. Sorry, right? So stay home. But no,
Well, if
for
you're
the
gonna bitch and complain, yeah, I would say that.
right. So I just feel like I would absolutely recommend it.
Yeah, me too.
It was incredible to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, yes. And especially when you're going to a foreign country, and even though you tout yourself as being bilingual, um, if you go to these foreign countries and it's hard to get around. Everybody speaks English throughout the whole world,
Right.
but it's still harder to really understand where to go, where not to go, what to see, what not to miss. Yeah, this is just the way to do it. Absolutely.
And that's the way I feel too. And the name of this tour is Patagonia Edge of the World. Boy, were we at the edge of the world. We were at the
Yeah,
very, very, very tip of South America, which I also want to interject that in my mind, I thought there was a solid point at the end of South America. Well, no, there are 1,000 islands.
yeah,
It doesn't work that way because
no,
I just never studied it. I'm not a cartographer,
yeah,
but I loved learning the geography. I loved learning about the different types of weather. I loved learning about guanacos and these animals that look like llamas, but they start with a G and they're called guanaco. I didn't know what
yeah,
a guanaco was. I love that about travel.
right. I think the Collette experience for me has allowed me to go to areas of the world that I really wanted to see, but that are hard to access. You think of Iceland in the heart of winter in
Yeah,
February,
right.
right? You think of Africa. I mean, Zimbabwe and Botswana, just there's not places I could just go check into a Marriott and figure it out.
No.
And I look at Buenos Aires and Patagonia. I mean, I'm grateful for the experience and your affiliation with them. I think it's amazing. And what it did for us, you and I always look at the holiday break between Christmas and New Year's. Where do we go? We were so hooked that we're planning to go back to Chile this holiday season because
Correct.
it was just amazing people and there's so much more we want to see.
No. Well, I'm glad I get to do it with you.
Yeah,
Thank
me
you.
too.
Thank you once again for coming on Travel Connections and to giving your insight and your color to a remarkable tour with Collette. We are very fortunate to work with them, and I look forward to doing this again with you sometime maybe this year. We'll see.
Well, thank you. I went off script the whole time,
Oh,
so
you
hopefully that's
did?
okay.
No one gave you a script, just saying. I gave you some possible questions. So please, no one think that I gave you a script.
And
That would be impossible.
I'll look forward to whispering Calafate in your ear later tonight. All
Oh
right?
my God, do I edit that out or leave it in?
I'll
I
leave
don't
it on the cutting room floor, but I know where
Okay.
to find you.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it.
Bye, Suzanne.
Bye.